Welcome to the Scott My Show, a podcast where we talk about bodybuilding, health improvement, and physique enhancement. Before we get into the show, I just wanted to let you know that I do offer one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in working with me, I offer personalized coaching where I can help you reach your goals, whether it be fat loss, building muscle, improving your health, or all the above. I provide tailored nutrition, training, and supplementation advice, one or all of those together, with 24/7 ongoing support to help you every step of the way with any questions you may have. If you're interested, you can DM me on Instagram, click the link in my profile to fill out a form, or ask any questions you may have. Also, we can hop on a free consult call where we can go over your goals, answer questions, and discuss what it would look like to work together. The show is brought to you by Element Electrolytes, and for a limited time, the Element Chocolate Medley is available with 3 flavors: chocolate mint, chocolate chai, and chocolate raspberry. They all go really well in any hot beverage, whether it's coffee, tea, or just a glass of hot water. And I personally love Element Electrolytes, and my wife does too. We've been using them for years. They're a great way to help boost performance, to help you get in the proper amount of electrolytes for a day, and help regulate brain health, physical health. Uh, Salt is important for a lot of things, and just drinking plain water doesn't get you the electrolytes you need. So check out Element in the description, or you can go to drinkelement.com/Scott Mize, and there you'll be able to get a free sample pack when you use my link and help support the show. Thank you. This is a quick disclaimer before we start the show. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical advice, and please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise regime, or medications. Thank you, and on to the show. All right, we are back with another episode with Paul, Mike, and Scott. Paul and Mike are both coaches with Gray Matter Training. I'll have links to their Instagram and information if you want to get in contact with them in the show notes. And welcome back to the show. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
Yeah,
Good.
we're doing
Good.
well.
How was the trip? How was the Gray Matter board meeting?
The
It was
retreat, dude.
excellent. It was excellent. It was good to thaw out for a little bit. As soon as we got off the plane, I felt myself just defrost.
Nice.
Yeah, it's sunny and 76 here today.
Oh God.
So it's pretty nice. I know like when the day Paul left, when I dropped him and Em off at the airport, it was like 74 or something, and they got back and it was like 23.
Yeah, that was jarring.
Yeah. It's starting to get nicer here in New York. I mean, nice is like slush instead of below freezing temperatures, but
Yeah.
whatever. Great. So do we want to do some questions?
Sure.
You
Yeah,
guys
we
have
can
anything else you wanted to rant about? Anything that's annoyed you particularly online lately?
I got a couple of my rants out when we were filming at the gym this
Okay,
Sunday, so
nice.
I'll save that for the post.
Great.
Oh, I think perhaps the only rant I have right now, I don't know if it's a rant, but it's just a general complaint. I've been it's on me as well. I'm hate watching these social media creators. I don't even want to call them influencers, but I've been like hate watching these people that are like this one guy in particular. I don't want to body shame. I'll put that out there. We don't body shame around here. Um, he's 6'2", 140 something pounds. Like literally, I forget if you said he was 146 or 148.
Okay.
So very small.
Yep.
Talking about hypertrophy advice, critiquing IFBB pros trading, telling people they have stuff wrong when it comes to their own training.
Okay.
And I don't know why. Usually that stuff does not bother me, but I've been starting to get bugged by people speaking with insane authority on hypertrophy that have been going to the gym for less than 2 months.
Yep.
It's been chewing me up. It's a lame
Everybody's an
thing to get
expert.
worked up about. Yeah, everyone is an
It would
expert.
probably I would probably get worked up about it as well if I didn't go into it with the mindset of this person is baiting me. They're not a
Yeah.
serious individual, and their opinion is not worth consideration.
Yeah, I'm trying to tell myself that it's just rage bait. But it works every time without fail. Like I don't follow the guy, but when I'm scrolling through reels and it pops up, I can't turn away. I watch his reel at least twice, and I'm like in the back of my head knowing the more I'm staring at this, the more it's going to continue popping up too. So it
You,
just feeds this vicious cycle.
that's funny. Yeah, I mean, especially if people have like read a couple studies and they feel like they're citing those studies, which like I can go on a whole rant about people calling themselves citing studies,
Uh,
but yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, this one guy I'm thinking of in particular, I don't want to target him. It's just I saw one of his reels momentarily before we got on the call. Um, he copies almost verbatim another creator who's like very much into that like optimal biomechanics jargon, who
Okay.
I think actually puts out really fantastic information and has a very good physique to back it up and coaches some people that are really really good. But this other guy copies his information and then just gets it wrong.
Yeah.
And when he posts his exercise demos, it's literally with an empty bar. It's like it's like showing his workout from the day and it's an empty bar Smith machine press. I'm like, please stop telling people how to train.
Who's the person he copies that you like?
Ryan Jewers.
I don't know
Oh,
that.
he's good.
Yeah, he's good. He's actually good. Um, he's a Canadian guy who has a very, very impressive physique. I think he's natural. Um, and most of the time, whenever I see Ryan Jewers stuff, a lot of it for me falls into that category of like this is great information, but for the majority of people,
Mhm.
it's not wholly necessary. But I think as like I think if you're a more advanced trainee or like if you're a coach, that kind of information can be useful, not necessarily to pontificate ideas to your clients, but just to have in the back of your head of, all right, maybe we should set up our exercise order this way, or we can use these specific exercises to develop, a lagging muscle group. That's where I think that stuff is really useful. But the telling people they're doing it wrong and you're doing it right, speaking of this binary, is what really irritates
Yeah,
me.
I agree. I think I got rage baited the other day too about somebody complaining about people not training hard enough.
Uh,
And I'm so sick of this rant of like nobody trains hard. You know, all these people say they train to failure, they don't. Like, why do you care so much how other people train? Like, why are
yeah,
you like sitting in your room getting upset about how other people train? Like,
yeah,
it's different if they're telling people to train some way or something like that, but like people have this notion that like I am a bodybuilder and bodybuilding is sacred. And if you say you're a bodybuilder and you're doing it differently than me, then you're threatening my existence, you know, like I get annoyed by that.
well, I also think to a large degree, some bodybuilders forget that people train for reasons other than bodybuilding. Like some people don't want to be a 275-pound freak.
Yeah.
Like some people just enjoy their current physique and their current level of musculature, and they know to maintain that, they don't have to go to like the depths of hell on their sets. So they're comfortable with maybe being a guy that does 3 to 1 reps in reserve because we still know that's good enough to get some response and to keep your muscle and to keep growing. But there are people who just train for general health.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people like in our world forget about that and forget that some people just I call it they train to want to look good naked.
Mm.
And that doesn't take a ton.
Yeah.
That doesn't take force feeding 6,000 calories and training to failure. It's spending 2.5 hours in the gym 4 or 5 days a week. It's not necessary for the average Joe.
Yeah.
And I think people don't remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm friends with a lot of those people.
Yeah.
Most of the people in my gym are are that I would classify as that. And,
Yeah.
I would never like interrupt them and say, you're training wrong, or like, don't do this, or how dare you,
Right.
like
Right.
if they're like, hey man, I see you doing that exercise like this, why do you do it that way? Then I'm happy to be like, oh yeah, this is why I do it, but like, try it for yourself. If you got to see what works for you. That's pretty much
Right.
how I give advice in the gym.
Right.
Yeah. And
um
I think that a lot of that comes from a place of just being generally divorced from the body standard of the general population.
Oh yeah.
Because, like, to us, to people that are in the bodybuilding space, someone that is like 175, 180 pounds, decently lean, not a huge amount of muscle, we're like, oh, that person has a terrible physique for bodybuilding.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
average person is like, that guy looks great. I want to look like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and then a lot of the people in the average population would see, guys are like 230 pounds shredded and be like, "Oh my God,
yeah, that's
how
disgusting.
like that's very uncomfortable looking.
Yeah.
The guy looks miserable."
They're right.
Um, yeah, 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 yeah. Every bodybuilder in their peak off season is like, "Holy shit, this is terrible. I'm miserable. I can't breathe. I can't sleep. I go up the stairs. I'm out of breath."
Yeah.
So it's probably not great to hold soccer moms to that level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, there's a speaking of soccer moms, there's a woman in my gym who I believe she's middle aged, and I've never seen someone train so hard like this woman does. It is beyond impressive. I wish Paul was there when we saw her, but every time I go to the gym and I see her, it looks like she's in hour like two of just training her face off, taking every single rep of every single set to maximal failure and doing tons of volume.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm like, I bet she has never had anyone complain about, or she's never complained rather, about feeling fatigued to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She
It's cool
probably
to
looks
see
pretty
those
good
people.
too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's my rant.
Yeah. We can get
Uh,
to some questions, unless Paul, you have
Yeah.
a diatribe.
No, I got it all out over the weekend.
All right.
okay.
Very good.
I'll save that for Instagram content and such.
All right. Go ahead. Anyone want to start? If not, I
Yeah,
have
I
one from
I
my.
I could start with one.
Okay.
Yeah, might be some.
I got one that was, what do you think about low, medium, and high carb days for bringing up weak body parts? I mean, I guess I'll start with that. I think it's a very short-sighted way to look at hypertrophy. Hypertrophy does not happen in a single day. If you are eating in just like if you're looking at your overall week and you're eating in a caloric surplus across the week, you having an extra 100 grams of carbs on the day you train delts is not going to magically make your delts better. And had you not had that carbs, you just had a balanced intake across the week. Um, Training adaptations take several weeks to happen. Your 1 day a week of having acutely high carbohydrate intake is not going to affect those processes. Um, just the same way as if you had 1 day per week of being in a deficit, you're not going to just get shredded. So I think that's a really short-sighted way of looking at hypertrophy. And another thing, just the whole weak point talk, 99% of people that I know talking about weak points do not actually have weak points. You need to grow everywhere. It's not that you have small arms or that you have small delts or small back. You're small everywhere. And not to say that as like a negative thing, but it's either realize I have to grow muscle everywhere, or you're going to be picking a new flavor of the week to start picking yourself apart, whether it's on your delts or your arms or your legs or whatever it may be. So really, the people that have weak points, I think that's reserved for like true advanced and intermediate, probably more advanced physiques that are looking to bring up muscle points based on a judge's feedback, not necessarily from what your body dysmorphia may or may not be telling you.
Right.
Well
And
said.
I also think that trying to put a lot of that attention on bringing up your weak body parts on the diet side of things is kind of misplaced attention, because
Yeah.
most often those things are either genetics or an issue with how you're training that weak muscle group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would rather place that attention in the why and how of the training rather than trying to do a bunch of shit with your diet to trying to bring that up. Because, like you said, I don't think that that's what's going to produce the adaptation in that muscle group specifically.
Agreed.
Totally agree. Yeah, I was actually having this discussion with when I was down in Florida with Nick Gloff and a bunch of other friends. And I think for off season, it just makes sense to have one day.
Yeah.
Just have one daily diet. Um, I don't even think, I mean, some people like having a rest day and a training day diet. I think for the most part, it doesn't really make a difference, especially if you're doing cardio on the rest days. Like your
Mhm.
expenditure should be roughly the same,
Yeah.
which is how I handle it at least. And then I think in a diet, it makes sense to have low days and high days. I think
Yeah.
that's the simplest
Yeah,
way.
for
And
sure.
like
I agree.
that's the way we handled my prep. It worked really well. We basically had dig days and then we had refeed days. And
Yeah.
we would dig for a certain amount of time until we were totally fucked. And then we would say, okay, let's have refeed days until we feel better. And that might be one, two, three. And they weren't crazy. It was like a normal amount of carbs to fill me up. I mean, crazy for most people, but it wasn't like go cheat and have everything. It's not like your one weekly refeed day.
Right.
But it's like low days and high days. I think that's because you're trying to when you're cutting, it's a little bit different. You're trying to balance between state of catabolism and washing off fatigue and
Yeah.
resetting and filling back up. Whereas when you're growing, you kind of want homeostasis, right? You want a steady, normal amount of an abundance of food for anabolism and
Right.
allow yourself to grow. So
Right.
that's kind of the way I
I, I will say I think that there is some application for some carb cycling in off season, specifically for people that have lower appetite. Because on those training days, we can take advantage of kind of a natural appetite spike post training, and we can get a lot of carbs in intra workout. So I think that that's a really good way to get some extra calories in, and
makes
then
sense.
maybe bring down the carbs on rest days. Maybe even remove an entire meal while keeping protein the same. I think that's a really good way to go about an off season when someone has a difficult time eating. But outside of that, I don't see a huge amount of benefit. Like mechanistically, I guess you could make the argument there's some insulin sensitivity benefits like across the length of a bulk. But like you said, if you're still active on your rest days and doing cardio, then that really shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. Just use insulin.
Right.
No, I refuse.
Yeah, I mean, I when I guys in the off season, I have a lot of their diets. I mean, dude, if you get to the point where you're needing several thousand calories, having your rest days being like 300 or 400 calories less, it's not like it's going to have any meaningful difference in terms of body composition. And one of the things that I like about just having a daily diet is it just keeps everything much more simple.
Right.
Your meals are the same every day. You don't have to think, oh, well, today's a rest day, so meal three, four, and five, I have to remove 100 grams of rice, and then but I make up for some of those calories with extra added fat to meal one and two. Like it's simpler, I think, in execution. Just have the daily diet, but like Paul mentioned, and Scott, you mentioned it. As soon as I start dieting people, and we start getting to the point where we might be getting some fatigue accumulation, that's when I start liking to do the cycling. But I for some people, I like doing a training day, a non-training day diet. And then some other people, I like having like what you described earlier, Scott, of dig days and refeed days.
Yeah, I think also part of the context we were talking about it in is one of our mutual friends who he is on very low food, even peak off season, and he has training day diet and a rest day diet. He's also a dad, has a very busy career, and some days he'll eat his training day diet, and then he won't be able to train. It only
Right.
happens like once a month, but it
Mhm.
stresses him out to like no end. And then
Mhm.
he's like, "Oh, the next day if I train, should I eat my rest day diet?" And he's like
Right.
freaking out about it. And I think for him, like he should just have one diet.
Yeah, even when he starts actually dieting, he should do that. And if you want to, and then if you want to refeed, go have like breakfast with your kids at a diner or something. Just
Yeah.
get pancakes and eggs. You'll be good.
Yeah. Cool. Good question. I've got one from Mike Nassif, our good friend. He asks, well, actually, I got to find the exact way he asked it, but it was like, at what point does GH maxing stop working or something?
um, I mean, for me, I would say like I don't. For those who are unaware, I wrote a book on growth hormone. It's one page. It's actually just one sentence, and it embodies pretty much all of the information between research and anecdote that we have out there on growth hormone and its application for bodybuilders. And it
Great
just
book.
says,
Very well
yeah.
written, well edited.
Um, all it says is to take as much growth hormone as you can afford and tolerate. Um, and where the upper limits of that is, I don't know. So you have some guys like I remember I previously worked with Alex Kickle, and when he and I spoke about growth hormone, he told me at one point he was using 40 units a day. And his physique just kept getting fuller, and he was getting leaner and getting better. So he's someone that just tolerated a lot. For whatever reason, I have this just like hang up on saying like maybe 20 units a day. Mostly just because the Serostim pen, it's like whatever the 18 units. And I just think of, oh well, the most I ever really hear guys using is one whole pen of Seros a day.
Yeah.
And whether that's from a budget constraint because you're spending a gazillion dollars a month on Seros, or if that's like the upper limit of how efficacious it is, I don't know.
Mm.
So I would say maybe it tops out at around 20 units,
Yeah.
depending on the
Yeah, and
individual.
I mean, if you really wanted to test this, you could just get your IGF-1 tested periodically, and the point at
Yeah,
which it stops increasing,
yeah,
that's your upper limit. That's the max you would take.
yeah,
But I mean, reasonably, I mean, how many guys can afford 20 units a day? Probably not many.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
I was gonna
I would
say like
agree. It's the upper limit is probably what your wallet and your hands at night can tolerate.
yeah. I would say for the average person who tolerates it well, I would say 15 is usually where people stop noticing increased benefits and
Yeah,
mostly just notice more downsides.
yeah,
But I would say that's the person who can tolerate it well. I've met a lot of people who, if they go above like 3 IUs, they have just bad issues, like really bad elbow pain or wrist pain, stuff like that.
yeah,
And
Really?
that may be the quality, it may be the timing, it may be different things, but there are a lot of people who just get way worse side effects at lower doses too.
yeah, yeah.
Those unlucky souls.
I know. Terrible. I have a guy right now that at 4 units he starts getting numb hands,
Yeah.
and it makes me very sad to hear that.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. They'll never know the joy of 10.
Yeah.
All right. You want to ask another one, Mike?
Um, yeah. So, one I got that I thought was interesting. It was asking how Paul and I started working together.
Mm,
But I think we lost the story of just like how us three became friends. Because I
mm.
feel like it's our friendship was the very quintessential like how guys become good friends seemingly overnight. So I guess we could start with how Paul and I started working together. I don't know, Paul, you can tell. You probably tell it better than me.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had already been friends for a while at that point. But when we were at North Americans this past August, leading up to that, I had been kind of, working up the courage to ask Mike if I could join Gray Matter. Because it was something that in the back of my head, I was like, okay, I'm new to this. I could use a little bit more guidance. I've already done a lot of education on my own, but what can I learn from working more closely with somebody that has a lot more experience than me, and frankly is better than me. I think that's how you get better, is to surround yourself with people that are better. Um, so when we were at North Americans, we were just kind of shooting the shit in the hotel room one night, and I forgot what we were talking about, but I was mentioning how I would like to do something a little closer to what you had been doing with gray matter. I forget what the exact context was, but you kind of threw out there like, why don't you just join gray matter? And I was like, are you serious? And we were like, yeah, okay, let's talk about it later. But it was just kind of a serendipitous moment where it was like in the back of my head, clearly it had been on your mind as well. So the rest is history.
Yeah.
Oh, and you guys
Yeah.
originally met through Dom mentorship, right?
No, we
No,
all
we
met through
actually met through
Discord.
the Discord.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
we both just so happened to be coached by Dom.
Oh, cool.
yeah. Well, I knew who Mike was
Yeah.
for a while beforehand, just from like, seeing people repost your posts and stuff. So I knew of you, but when I joined the Discord, I think the first thing I asked was like I DM'd you about doing Dom's one-on-one, and you were like, yeah, go for it, and that was obviously a great decision.
Mm.
So,
Cool.
and actually, I think after that, the next interaction we had was you had a Q&A on your Instagram, what's called like the broadcast channel.
Uh,
And I asked something about like your thoughts on the cognitive side effects of DHT inhibitors or
mm,
5-alpha reductase inhibitors.
uh,
And you were like, oh, that's a great question. And I was like, in the Discord, I was like, oh, that's me that asked it. So I
oh,
think that's how I got
sick.
on your radar initially.
Nice.
Very sick. Yeah, and then I think another a good story, just the quintessential guys becoming friends overnight story, is like how all three of us became friends. Basically, it was me and Paul were talking about the New York Pro, and then Scott asked both of us as well, like, "Oh, are you guys considering a New York Pro?" And we're like, "Oh, yeah, we're thinking about it." And keep in mind, none of us had ever met before. We'd only ever had like very topical conversation on Discord,
Yeah.
and then Scott texted me and Paul and was like, "Oh, just stay with us for whatever, like the 4 days you guys are in town for the New York Pro." And we both me and Paul were just like, all right, cool. So our first time, all three of us like ever hanging out was we're unpacking bags to stay at Scott's place
Yeah.
for a weekend. And I love telling that story because it's just like the epitome of like guy friendships. How it's like I'm just gonna get on a plane to go like hang out with this guy and sleep at his house that I've never met before.
Yeah.
I remember telling Emma about it the first time, and she was like, "What the hell is happening? You don't know these people." And I was like, "Yeah, it's enough. I know them
That's
enough."
funny. Yeah, it was great. You guys were great guests. Yeah, I remember I had private messaged, like direct messaged both of you in Discord a few times on various things. I
Mhm.
forget exactly what I had talked to Paul about. Maybe it was like working with Dom, and then I had talked to you, Mike, about I was having like a lot of digestive issues in prep, and you were helping me a ton with that stuff.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I was just like, oh, are you guys coming? Totally stay here, no worries. And it was great. It's an awesome trip. Got some
Yeah.
good pizza. We sat in a lot of
Mhm.
Ubers and got some burritos. Cool. So I have one question, and it's topical for me because I've now had three pretty bad stomach bugs in the last 3 months, and it was tips for overcoming stomach illness. So I had a friend who just came back from Costa Rica, and he caught some type of stomach bug or food poisoning on the way back. Um, and so I think basically there's four drugs that I think are really helpful, four supplements slash drugs. One is Pepsid. You can get that over the counter. It's just like an acid reducer. Another is Gas-X, or simethicone. That's helpful. And then, if you're having a lot of diarrhea, definitely Imodium can be helpful. And you can take up to like 8 a day. You don't necessarily want to do that because then it can cause constipation and it might prevent the virus from exiting your body. But if you're having so much diarrhea that you're worried about severe dehydration, it's definitely a good idea. And then the last is a prescription, but you can just message your doctor and usually get it no problem. And that's Zofran. It's an
Mm.
anti-nausea drug. It's very effective. And then the only other thing I would say is like hydrate, but take it slow, like sips of water at first, try to get electrolytes. I've been leaning on the electrolyte drink
Oh
from
yeah.
Gatorade. That's really good. They have it in most like convenience stores and stuff. It has a really actually very good balance of electrolytes, and then obviously LMNTs. Um, and yeah, don't try to eat until you at least feel somewhat okay with handling foods. Um, and then rest. So yeah, that's kind of my advice on stomach bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one that's pretty good. It's not a drug, but it's a supplement. Iberogast is really good.
Yeah,
There's
that's
also
what
some other herbal supplements, like herbal digestive bitters, that have really helped me in the past. But yeah, I think your point of, lean on bland foods or liquids, electrolytes. I would definitely get some EAAs in as well, if you
Mm,
can't tolerate getting food down, or if because most of the time, if someone's stomach is upset, weight is just going to set them off,
yeah,
even though
Yeah.
it's liquid. So EAAs are a pretty decent way to not try and not lose some mass when you're not eating.
yeah,
Yeah.
And then when you're reintroducing solid foods, keep it bland. White rice. Hate to say it, but boiled chicken. It's probably a good move. Shredded, just things that digest well, or that are already kind of pre-digested mechanically. That's what I like to do anyway.
Yeah. I think iberogast is gonna that was gonna be what I was gonna say, but from
Mm.
a more medicinal side of things, um, I'm not big on IV therapy, but I think this is a good time. You can go get an IV, and if you
Yeah.
go to any of those clinics, at least like the IV clinics around me, you can actually get Zofran added into the IV.
oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I would say a little bonus, a little bit of Toradol is also very nice. Um,
Mm,
that's just a mild like painkiller.
mm,
So if your abdomen is really torn up, like from the musculature, just from the heaving, that could definitely help. And then with that, you can get different things added to it. Um, I like if I was sick with a stomach bug, I'd get the Myers cocktail added to it, which is just a mix of different B vitamins. So I would lean into that. Um, and then something else that I really like is afterwards, your biome is going to be pretty torn up as well. So I really like either, depending on how severe your stomach was and if you had to use any kind of antibiotics, um, Dr. Mercola's Afterbiotics is a really great product. So
mm.
whenever someone's had like a stomach problem, I like adding that in, or at a minimum, some Sac B is really good.
Yeah, classic
Probably
sack.
also a good time to throw in some oral BPC as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you could do that. You could do that if you have a good source for oral BPC that isn't gonna whack you over the head from a pricing point.
Good luck.
Yeah, then it's not a bad time to use that.
yeah. I used some injectable BPC. I just tossed a vial and then one day, and then glutathione as
Yeah,
well.
glutathione's a good one.
Mm,
Glutathione is something I just started keeping on deck. I always keep at least two kits just in case.
smart. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't think of the like transitioning to EAAs thing, Paul, because for me it just went from like I cannot tolerate a sip of water without getting sick to okay, I'm better, I can eat now. So it's like very, very like drastic change.
Yeah. Only thing I would say is, speaking from experience, the most EAAs are very, very strongly flavored.
Yeah.
So it would probably be better to get
Yeah.
like the bulk supplements one that's unflavored. Just
Or
a
just
little bit of Neo in it.
water that bad boy down bigly.
Yeah.
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 Dude, even like my half gallon of it for my intra workout, it's pretty strong.
I
Yeah.
remember Raw used to have, I don't know if they still have it from the flavor profile, but the red slush EAAs that I used to use one of those big clear Nalgene's that John Meadows used to drink out of. And
Yeah.
I'd put one scoop of the red EAAs into that full thing of water. And it was so packed with coloring that like you couldn't see through the liquid at all. Uh, and it was so sweet, but I loved it when I was dieting because it tasted so similar to like a red slushy from 7-Eleven that it was what I was like, I don't even care if there's any benefit of EAAs. This tastes tremendous.
Yeah, I use the Nutricost ones.
Yeah, that's what I
Their
use.
punch is pretty good. I use that in my intro. Yeah, I saw it on Dom's story yesterday or the day before. He was like using raw EAAs from
Uh,
bulk supplements, and he
uh,
was like, "Yeah, it tastes pretty horrible, but with a scoop and a half of like the raw replenished product, it drowns it out enough."
yeah.
It's it's so bad.
I was like,
They
"Brave man."
taste like how gym socks smell.
Yeah,
That's what the regular EAs taste like.
it's like gym socks mixed with raw citrulline malate. Like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, oh, I have a question for you guys. Favorite brands of protein powder in terms of digestion and taste?
Dude,
Mm,
I like just the cheap My Protein whey
Okay.
isolate. I've been using them. I think maybe since I was in high school, or I know minimally since I've been an undergrad, I started using them because like a couple times a year, it seems like they have a going out of business sale where everything's like 80%
Yeah.
off.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Um, but I just get pretty bland flavoring. I think the more exotic flavoring you get, generally the less likely you are to actually use it up, just because it can't go into very many things. Like you can't make a fruit smoothie and also, use your uh like cinnamon Captain Crunch
Yeah.
whey isolate with
Cookies and
just like
cream.
whatever. Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm a big fan of just keeping it with vanilla and chocolate.
yeah. For me, it really depends on what I'm using it for. If I'm just mixing it with water, I'll drink whatever. As long as it's isolate, I don't care. But if I'm mixing it into like cream of rice or oats or something, um, the HD ones are really good.
Huh.
Raw is pretty good depending on the flavor. And then when I was in Texas staying with Diana over December, she let me try a couple of her Evogen ones. Those are outrageously good,
Yeah, I've
Oh,
heard Evogen
like
is very tasty.
unbelievably good.
oh,
But the flavor is very strong, so I'd probably have to mix it with like 90 grams of cream of rice for it to not be too much over
yeah.
time.
90 grams. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I know it's not a problem for you. That's like your energy quantity.
that's like half my breakfast.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so the thing about the raw flavors, so they had like their Black Friday sale, right? And then
Oh,
the
I got
next
so much
day
of
they
it.
were like, "Oh, the Black Friday sale is over, but we still have shit to get rid of." And it was like the flavors that taste horrible that like
Uh,
they've discontinued. And so I got like four of those and they were all
Oh
really
God.
bad.
Did you get the apple pie one?
Yep, that's horrible.
That was awful.
Aftertaste
It's
is so
so bad.
bad. It like burns
It's
your
horrible.
throat.
yeah,
The
dude,
only
just
thing that I can use it for is mixing it with like fruity pebbles.
Yeah,
you got to stop getting I feel like the more exotic the flavor, it's the higher likelihood it's just gonna taste like shit.
true. Very true. Very true. I learned my lesson.
Yeah, like
You know what
vanilla
I
and
was
chocolate,
doing?
old reliable.
Their
You know what I
vanilla
was
was
doing for a
horrible too. It
while?
was one of their old vanillas that like clearly
Oh
didn't make
yeah.
the cut. It was really bad. And then
For a while I was just getting the unflavored whey isolate off of Amazon
That's
and then
crazy.
getting I was getting the True Nutrition flavor packets and then mixing it myself
Oh,
so I can control the strength of it.
okay.
And
yeah,
the True Nutrition cookie butter is unbelievable. That
yeah,
one I could have every day without a
that's a good
problem.
one. Yeah, I've just been doing like DPS nutrition deals.
Mm.
I really like the mutant whey ISO. That one's really good, like the chocolate.
Yeah,
Um,
I tried that at your place. That one is good.
and then Axe and Sledge, I'm trying for the first time right now, and they have their flavors taste so good and it digests so well, but they're definitely like way too sweet. Like
Yeah,
definitely like three times the level of sweetness I would want in a whey
Nice.
protein.
I might like that. I might
Yeah.
like that.
No,
I
they're
think
you would really like the peanut butter honey, Mike. I feel like that one's really
Okay.
that one is good.
yeah.
That one is really good. Scott, I think you would benefit from just getting some of the unflavored stuff and mixing it into the accent sledge if it's
Yeah,
too much for you.
that's a
Just
smart thing.
That'd probably be
diluting
good.
it.
I should
So
do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sound like a spaz saying this. When how do you ensure that things are adequately mixed though? You don't have like a commercial powder
Okay,
mixer.
here's my method. I
Okay.
have a giant metal mixing bowl and I weigh out the quantity of each thing and then I use a big whisk and I whisk it up really good. It's very
Yeah,
scientific.
that's that would stress me out way too much.
Okay. Oh, Mike, this will stress you out even more. So I make my own pre-workout, right?
I don't like that
And
already.
it's two ingredients. Two ingredients. It's citrulline and glycerol. And we know what happens when you have too much glycerol.
Yeah.
So it's like 2 grams of glycerol per 9 grams of citrulline. And so I'll just be like, okay, I'm gonna do like 40 grams of glycerol and then whatever 9 times 20, I'll do 180 grams of citrulline. I just pour that on
Uh-huh.
top,
Uh-huh.
put a couple flavor packets in, and then I take the bottle and I shake. And then
Oh
that's my
no.
pre-workout for the next 2 months.
Oh, I
Have you
hate
ever
that.
used too much glycerol and just shit yourself at the gym?
Hasn't happened. Hasn't happened actually.
Oh, well, it's not fun.
It's going to. It's not an if, it's
Yeah.
when. When with this moonshine pre-workout that you're making.
I actually had
Dude,
a
I'm not
conversation
spending
with a
like
client.
$2 a day on pre-workout or whatever those things cost.
So I had a conversation with a client the other day, and he was asking me about glycerol. He was like, "Is it any good?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's awesome if it doesn't make you shit your pants."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay, well, how much can I take?" I was like, "Okay, start out low, like 3 grams, and then every week increase it by a little bit until you shit your pants, and then pull back."
This is what progressive overload actually is.
Yeah,
I just stay at
advanced methods here.
and my only justification for that is that's what Justin Compton said. He's
Yeah.
like 2 grams of glycerol into workout. And I'm like, great. I don't need to try more than that.
So there is a guys, might actually find this somewhat ironic that I'm like shitting on you guys for hand mixing pre-workout. Um, Back in my day, when I was a young man, and DMAA was just banned. Um, I used to buy regular C4. You could buy C4 powder from Costco. I'd buy that, and then I would buy DMAA powder from a true research company, like
Oh
not one of
God.
these research places that are sending you just like underground lab Ozempic. I
Yeah.
mean, actual, I had to send them the CAS number and the quantities I would want. I have to explain what I'm doing with it. And so I would mix the 1,3-dimethylamine into my C4, and that's when I would just like shake the container up, which is for those who don't know, 1,3-dimethylamine. It's I forget what I think it's one either a methyl molecule or one carbon molecule. I forget. If you reorient the chemical and add, I think, another methyl molecule, it becomes methamphetamine.
Yep.
So that's what was in Jacked and Crazed and
Jack
stuff that got it.
3D.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that got it taken off the market back
Did you
in the
ever try
day.
Jack 3D?
Yeah, that's why I started fiending for this stuff.
Yeah.
And when it got banned, I was like, hey, I need my fix. So I bought, if you were a researcher, using air quotes here, you could buy 1,3-dimethylamine. You still can. And I would just mix it into my C4 and shake it up. And I'm surprised I didn't kill myself doing that,
Oh my
like
God.
by accident. Because I would put, I had the whole like proportion figured out of for the whole container. If I wanted, I forget how many micrograms in one scoop, I would need to add this many grams to the entire container. But it's if you messed up your calculation a little bit, because the scoops were the amount that you needed for it to be the active chemical is barely visible to the human eye. So
Okay.
it's a very small amount. So if you mess up, you could be like 10xing your
Oh,
DMA intake by a lot. So I would not recommend doing that. But back in the day, I was home brewing my own pre-workout, I guess.
like people who buy raws for
For
semi
gear.
and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a funny Jack 3D story. So in college, when we were on the rowing team, every year when we came back from summer break to set up the fall racing season, we would have an erg test. And it would be a 10K, which is like 40-minute max performance as fast as you can possibly go erg test. And it was in Philly in like the end of August, so total summer melting heat in a basement with no air conditioning and like 40 dudes doing this all at once. And like you had to fight. There were like two of these giant fans in the whole room, and like the seniors would get them. So me and my buddy, he's a sophomore. We're both sophomores. And he's like kind of crazy, and he decides to take like triple dose of Jack 3D before this erg test.
Oh
Oh
no.
God.
When like we're in this blazing hot basement, dehydrated, like max performance, as hard as you can go, cardiovascular event for 40 minutes. And like right before we get going, he's like shaking like this, like not even like a little bit, but like, and he's like, my
Convulsing.
heart feels weird. And he gets on the erg and he pulls like a pretty good time. Not great because he like wasn't really training over the summer. And
Uh-huh.
afterwards, he's like on the floor. I think he had to go to the emergency room or the urgent care. He ended up being
Nice.
fine, but like that's not that's why you don't take Jack 3D for like you don't take it, period, but definitely not for like endurance stuff.
Yeah. The in high school, the after Jack 3D got banned, there was one pre-workout. It was called like Purple Craze, I think it was called, or it might have just been called Craze. And that's what I was using at the time before I started, the home mixing C4. And I remember I was drinking it before the gym, which I was drinking it in my last period of school because I was just working out in my high school's weight room right after school. And one of the girls I was friends with, like, Mike, what is that? I'm like, oh, it's just pre-workout. She's like, can I have a sip of it? I was like, sure, you're not gonna like it, but sure. Because it tasted really just god awful.
Okay.
She took a sip of it and she's like, oh, that tastes really bad, and then goes about her business. We're just sitting there waiting for class to end. And 5 or 10 minutes later, she gets like super flush and she's like, what's in that? My heart is pounding. And her heart rate was super high. She's like, I can feel my heart beating in my hands. And then she's like, started getting super nauseous and then threw up in the middle of class from
Oh my
how
God.
stimulated she was.
Wow.
Uh, Come to find out, she's prescribed, or was, I can't speak on her now, Adderall, and was taking an extended release and then later in the day an instant release. So she took the instant release shortly before having the
Wow.
crazed pre-workout, and I guess it was just too much and threw all of
Yeah.
it up.
Wow. That's scary. Crazy. Be careful with your stimulants.
Yeah, for real. Stick
Uh,
to the white monsters.
yeah, can never go wrong.
Yeah.
Do you have another question, Mike, or you want me to ask another one?
Um, I got asked who Paul and I have getting ready to compete
Oh, that's a
this
great question.
season. Yeah. I mean, we both have a fair number. Paul, you can start.
Yeah, so I have a natural bikini competitor, my client McKay. She's going to be going in early June. So we're in the early stages of prep right now, going very well. She'll be a first time competitor. And then I have another natural guy, Drew, who's competing a little bit later in the year. I'm very excited about. Drew's going to be a killer.
Yeah,
So I
Drew's
don't
gonna be
have
sick.
any, yeah, I don't have any enhanced competitors this year, but I'm teeing up a couple to compete next year.
Nice.
Both of them I am also very, very excited about. And who knows, maybe someone will want to prep this year and reach out.
Yeah.
But that's who I have on the docket right now. But
Nice.
I have a couple next year that I think they're going to be very good. One I'm
Yeah.
maybe looking at pro qualifiers for.
Nice.
Sick.
Very good. Um, I have two bikini girls getting ready right now. Um, One, I'm talking maybe with a second wellness competitor um, that are getting ready. Then I have two open guys. So one of the bikini competitors and one of the wellness girls is we're hopefully going to go for pro qualifiers this year, which would be really really great. And then similar to Paul, I have a bunch of people, I call it in the slow cooker, that are going to be competing next season, which I'm really excited for.
Kaylin's not competing again this year, right?
Nope, now we're probably going to take the remainder of the year to keep growing and then probably start prep around Christmas time this coming year, so we can start getting ready for some of these earlier spring shows.
So her quads will be the size of my body by then.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kaylin's an absolute freak.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling you the difference between seeing her in North Americans, like when she was just coming out of the show versus now, is wild.
Yeah.
Is a drastic difference.
Anytime she sends me her check-ins and it's like, how have your quads grown another inch? Like, we are not really training quads with the same intensity or same volume rather that we are training other muscles. And it's like she thinks about her quads growing and they just start ballooning.
Yeah.
Dude, some people just got the minerals like that.
Yeah, for real.
I really want to train quads with her.
Yeah, what does her leg volume look like? Her lower body volume.
Let me pull it up. I don't have it I don't have her
Seen some
program.
videos. I remember seeing one video on Discord of like her just doing a leg press set, and it was just like perfect execution. It
Yeah,
was like,
Yeah.
I know what video you're talking about. And the whole time I was thinking, man, if I could get every one of my people doing every set of like press exactly like that,
yeah,
I would be a very happy coach.
yeah,
Yeah. Luckily, I got her very, very early into her bodybuilding career. Um, so there wasn't anything we had to like unlearn. There was no bad habits really to unlearn. It was just here's what we're going to be doing moving forward. Um, so do you want to know her overall leg volume or just quads?
I'm curious about overall leg volume because it's got to be something obscene,
Yeah, I mean, so she's training legs 3 days per week.
right?
Um, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 exercises between 2 and 4 sets apiece on most days. So she's doing anywhere between, I would probably say close to 18 sets 3 times per week, mostly of hamstrings and glutes. And
Yeah,
then she has 5 sets of quads.
yeah.
that's
That's
probably what I need to do.
I don't think a man could handle that kind of volume.
No, I agree with you. The girls I train get smashed with volume. There's actually
Yeah,
some decent research actually saying that that might just be like a sex difference, a biological sex difference.
right,
Women can generally tolerate higher volumes of higher intensity workload than men.
right.
I even saw this like when I was doing strength and conditioning work in person. It seemed like my female athletes were much more fatigue resistant than male athletes,
Right.
and also just tend to complain less. I find that time and time again.
Huh.
Like there's a lot I get a lot less like complaints and over analyzation from the women that I coach rather than the guys.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I had a question to kind of go along with this. And I wasn't really thinking about it between sexes, but more like, within females or within males. Do you find that people who have muscle groups that grow better, like Kaylin's legs, for instance, are usually people who get better pumps from fewer sets and like people who need less volume for that muscle to grow?
Ooh.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they need less volume for that muscle group to go, but I definitely noticed that when someone has airtight mind muscle connection to a certain muscle group and they get an insane pump just from a couple of exercises, whether or not they're actually like fatigued from that low amount of work, I do notice that those muscle groups tend to grow better. I noticed that for myself. I noticed that in clients. I think it's just a matter of being able to engage that muscle more effectively, whether that's from your leverages, your movement execution, or whatever. If you can engage that muscle correctly and create maximal mechanical tension within that muscle on the movements for it, it's probably going to grow better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people just naturally have it with certain muscle groups and
Yeah.
some don't.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think, obviously it's very small. It's N of one. A decent example of that. I have some pretty bad right side nerve damage on my body. So like my right leg is mostly numb. and my right arm, I don't have a ton of feeling in it. Um, and it's very obvious in my check-ins that my right leg and my right arm are smaller than my left side. And while I train, it's very hard for me to really feel like I'm loading any muscle in particular on my right side. It kind of just feels like sets are ambiguously difficult as opposed to like, oh, this bicep curl is really taxing my bicep. It just feels like the set gets hard ambiguously and then I hit failure.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that kind of you could just see it. I'm the same person, so it's like my genes are very different, right side to left. Um, that my left side that I can load much better and I get pumps much easier is pretty significantly more developed than my right side.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, um, Paul, you made a really excellent point about connection and execution.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I think, yeah, when I think about like my back, I've never had a problem at all connecting with my back. It's like
exactly.
super easy
Exactly.
for me. It's like from day one. And I think it comes from rowing because you're not using your back that much during rowing, but you are basically connecting to your lats so that you can push with your legs
Yeah.
uh,
Right.
the whole time. And so that always came super natural to me. And so I can basically do way less back volume and still grow from it. My back has always been a strong point. Um, I can still tolerate a lot of back volume. It's not like I fatigue more quickly on back. So that's interesting. But yeah, it's definitely a matter of connection for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Cool. Any other questions before we wrap up? Any ones you guys wanted to cover?
Oh, I did get a good question. Um, what do I think about injectable L-carnitine, if it actually does anything?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think it depends what your goal is. I think for hypertrophy, it does very little. Um, I do know that there is some data about overloading, like carnitine stores, helping with androgen receptor sensitivity. When you're blasting, probably not really a concern, but maybe when you're cruising, it could help there. Um,
Hmm.
but where
Why
I
is that?
do, um, so when you are increasing your total amount of androgens, your body will upregulate the amount of androgen receptors that you have. So we don't need to worry so much about androgen receptor sensitivity because if we need more receptors, we're just going to make more. Um,
Yeah.
and also, you just have it's another thing. It's just another shot. And carnitine injections, um,
Hurt.
they hurt. They're decently high injection volume. Like they're usually 1 milliliter or more per day. Um, and so when you're already blasting and you're doing a 3 milliliter shot 3 or 4 times a week, you probably don't want to add another milliliter per day on top of that. But when you are cruising, maybe you can make the argument that having some injectable L-carnitine will help the lower amount of drugs you're using work a little better in terms of body composition and hypertrophy. So it could be worth using there. But where I like to use it is part of fertility protocols for guys
Hmm.
that um, are either on gear and wanting to start a family or used to use gear and are having some fertility problems. Um, there's some really, really cool information. It's even actually used in clinical practice for men who are having fertility issues, where if we look at um, a male sperm sample, if that's what's causing the issue and it's not based on the female's physiology, that carnitine can help with sperm motility and just overall like the volume of sperm that is being produced. So that's where I like it. Um, Outside of that, it may be some benefit for endurance sport, but then again, like I did a presentation on carnitine uh, when I was in grad school because I used to be like carnitine pilled. I thought I was taking it every day for like 3 years. Um, there is really not a whole lot of reason I think to be using it outside of maybe fertility, and there's actually even some detriment to your thyroid
Mm,
if you overload your carnitine stores and the CPT1, transport system. Your thyroid can start to suffer a bit. So if you take it for body composition and then your thyroid starts to suffer, you know, it's six one way, half a dozen the other. You're not
yeah,
really doing a whole lot.
yeah. I remember Dr. Scott Stevenson, I believe, talking about that,
Yeah,
the thyroid piece.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I mean, at least in a growing phase, the effects seem to be at least neutral, if not slightly positive. But like on top of all the other stuff we're doing, how much of an impact is that going to make? Like on a marginal scale, probably not all that much.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I noticed the people that really like it also coincidentally have a discount code for the places that sell it. So I've just noticed people who don't get a kickback from it do not seem to make it seem like it's that big a deal.
Yep.
yeah,
Sounds right.
and I mean, in a dieting phase, I mean, absent the context with the thyroid thing that you brought up, um, acetyl carnitine is probably going to be the go-to for more natural competitors. Enhanced competitors would probably go for injectable, but like on top of the fat burners that you're already taking as an enhanced
Yeah,
competitor, how much is it really doing? Like if you're already
exactly.
taking, Clen, potentially DNP, something like that, I don't really see it making that much of a difference. For a natural competitor, we can lean on yohimbine instead of spending a bunch of money on acetyl carnitine because it is very expensive.
Yeah,
I just think that there's other things that will make a bigger impact.
yeah.
But
Great. Well said. All right, guys. Thanks for the time. Great chatting with you as always.
yeah,
Yes.
Folks, if they want to find you on Instagram, it's Mike. You want to share yours?
Oh yeah, yeah. Mine it's at mike.ryan.white. Very simple.
Okay, great. And Paul?
mine is Paul Romzek _ GMT.
Awesome. I'll have links to those in the show notes too. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.